Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 58 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph J. Sadowski, and I'm the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We have a whole lot of polls for you today. We are talking about Batman and Robin number 17, Daredevil Unleash Hell number 1, Living Hell number 2, Mutant Nation number 3, Batman Dark Patterns number 2, and Lucky Devils number 1.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. Or you can find me personally on most of the same socials at JJAZ1111.
And anywhere you find a Katie Markham Pro, that's me.
Yeah. Let's get into the news. Okay, Katie, before we get to our weekly polls and we talk about Batman and Robin, I would like to talk to you about Robin and Batman.
Oh.
So there has been a little bit of news from one Jeff Lemire.
Yes.
About I know you were aware, but I'm gonna.
I've not actually looked at the news. I just know that there was news.
No. Oh, okay. No, I know you are aware there was a Robin and Batman series several years ago from Jeff Lemire and Dustin
Nguyen, yeah.
Yeah,
When?
thank you for doing it before I attempted to do it. That really saved me. But it was a 3-issue mini years ago about the early days, or literally the earliest days, pretty much,
yes.
of our boy Robin, Dick Grayson as Robin, rather. And recently, Jeff Lemire has kind of I guess hinted at, and then Bleeding Cool has leaked that coming in April will be a 3-issue follow-up, which is going to focus on Jason Todd as Robin. Interestingly,
that is very interesting.
Yeah. I'm guessing with the current Batman and Robin year 1, there wasn't really room for more Dick, and we got like World's Fine. I think the year 1 Dick has been kind of mined into now.
Yeah, I guess what throws me off is that it one of the things that I remember very much about the Batman or the Robin and Batman series was how intrigued I was by Dick's interaction with the Titans, because he essentially, if I remember correctly, he like joins the Titans under the guise of being a Titan, but with the purpose of spying on the Titans.
Oh yeah.
Which was a really interesting angle for I think Robin, who's normally portrayed as much more of a team player. So I would you were at least loyal to the team.
I would argue Dick Grayson is usually. Yes, I think Dick Grayson as Robin is usually portrayed the way that he was. Like I think he's kind of usually
like a little cagey, but I never really get the sense that he's like spying on the team.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Like to be fair, I don't know that he was. The vibes were it was more of like he was excited about Jordan, but then Batman was like you're spying on them. So it was, and I think that was fairly followed up on in the World's Finest series. Like I think that was our follow up of Dick actually accepting the team like as his like
Oh, see, that's the thing is I wanted to see more of him being a little spy.
Yeah, I don't think we were ever getting that. I think World's Finest was what we were getting,
which is great. I love Teen Titans, World's Finest Teen Titans. But I was not expecting Jeff Lemire to go the Jason Todd route. Do we know is it still Dustin Nguyen on the
yes, it's still Dustin Dustin Nguyen
because
basically this information is complicated by the fact that basically that Jeff Lemire had talked about the fact that there is a 3-issue mini being drawn by Dustin Nguyen that's going to be announced to launch in April, and then Dustin Nguyen had said last year that the follow-up will be focusing on Jason Todd as Robin, and then Bleeding Cool has kind of put things together, and we've reached this is clearly the follow-up.
I'm super duper here for this. I think that a 3-issue mini is like a really good way to explore an individual Robin.
They were bigger, right?
They were Black Label.
Yeah, they were chunky issues. They were like perfect bound, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they actually had that little spine going on.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I think that what I'm talking about specifically is like a little mini series that's meant to be its own
Yeah, yeah.
self-contained thing, because the Robins are so like there's so many different interpretations of them. I feel like having them in like a this is about this Robin, and this book feels like it has like a strong sense of its own identity. I feel like that's the best way to tell like flashback stories about the Robins.
Yeah.
So I am quite excited for this. And
Yeah,
I just
I'm
love when
interested.
Go
Yeah, I'm
ahead.
interested because like there were some things that the original series did that I wasn't super happy was being retconned
Hmm.
in the main continuity. One being the fact that Dick joined the Titans like to the fact, which
Yeah.
is kind of like just a thing now that I'm not. And the fact that he wasn't the first sidekick, which I don't love, like that he became
Yeah.
sidekick after all these people. I don't love that either. So like I'm interested to see what they do with Jason. Because basically what I'm trying to get at is they showed a willingness to retcon in that first
Hmm.
series. Like they did not feel kind of beholden to even fairly big things that had been
Yeah.
established. So I'm interested to see kind of what they do here. Jason is probably the one where you can get away with the most on that front
Hmm.
because he has
He's already
his
been
time as
retconned
Robin
1,001
has been
time.
retconned to hell because
Yeah.
like originally he was just second Dick Grayson, and then he was kind of like a little perfect boy. Like I don't know if you've ever gone back and read like old Jason Todd things. Like there was a
It's
time that he was
so
like the
funky.
perfect like little like
Yeah.
good boy Robin, which is so funny. And then obviously the more recent retcons have been he was just
Yeah.
as big of a little shit as Robin as possible.
Yeah.
Say, I think the little shit Robin is fun. I think there's something cool about like the Jason Todd who was like the perfect little Robin,
Oh,
but then becomes
same.
so fucking dark after he
Right?
dies.
And like I feel
And
like
I
it
wouldn't
makes
mind if
so
that's
much
actually like
sense.
something that this mini plays with. Like I would love that if we kind of got a little bit like back of that
Hmm.
Jason Todd, but I wouldn't be
No, I think
expecting it.
that'd
But
be
it's just
cool. I
something I'm
think
throwing
that
out there.
the one of my favorite things when you and I are talking about specifically like DC comics is my complete disregard for canon when it's a flashback. I'm like, oh, this isn't taking place in like right now times. Whatever. It doesn't have to behold the
It
canon.
matters.
And I know
It
that with stuff like
matters.
this, it is creating the canon, and I, on a logical level, understand that that is true. But on an emotional level, I'm like, well, fucking ever. It's a retcon.
There's
Whatever.
these many
I can ignore
conversations.
it if I
We had a
want.
bunch of conversations with this when we were talking about the Robin and Batman series.
Hmm.
Like we was there a lot because like I am a big Jeff Lemire guy, but Robin and Batman definitely had its couple things that just that
Hmm.
rubbed me the wrong
That's
way.
super duper fair.
Actually, I was talking with a couple of other creators in a magical place where all of us creators talk together that must clearly exist. But
I jumped
what
in
we were
just to
talking
talk
about,
about May's book and then
yeah,
peaced
yeah,
out.
yeah. But we were talking about kind of the similar things about Robin and Batman. But in any case, I am very excited. Mr. Wen is fantastic,
So
and Jeff
talented.
Lemire is obviously also fantastic, and we'd love some Robin action. I mean, we're reading Batman and Robin right now, so
Yes.
obviously, Robin and Batman would also make sense to be a thing we talk about.
That's right. And I'm sure we will. Well, do you have any
Yeah.
other news for us on this fine day?
I do.
Ooh,
We
oh.
have we have one other bit of news, which is a little bit less, I think, in our wheelhouse, but
Okay.
it feels important
Oh, is this
because not important. It's an it feels like something that is very relevant to the. I like talking about things that I think could impact the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
industry in
Is
an
this
interesting
the
way.
is this the Speed Racer manga thing?
Um, I think you are thinking of the right thing, but that is wrong. If that makes
The thing
sense.
here's the thing, gang. Even when I know the news that's coming, I don't know the news.
Like Speed Racer is not involved, but I do think
Okay.
you are thinking about the right thing.
Yeah, there's like a big manga thing going
Yes,
on.
yes, yes. This is what I'm talking about. So Mattel has recently
Oh,
announced
Hot
a
Wheels.
partnership. Yes, it's Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
Let's be Hot Wheels. So basically, I'm going to just go through the whole thing for people
Yes.
who have no context here. So Tokyo Pop and Mattel have announced a partnership to develop manga-style graphic novels targeting ages 8 to 12, based on Hot Wheels and Barbie. The first titles include a Western-style manga graphic novel series inspired by Hot Wheels and new stories featuring characters from Barbie, both set to debut in 2026. So like big runway there for when they're
Oh
going to come
yeah,
out
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Plenty
this
of
this
room to
feels
build
very
up speed.
interesting. Yeah, this feels very relevant and because like it's going for 8 to 12, which is a market that isn't typically gone for. Two, it's using Western properties to do something more manga inspired.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Which, like, we've
And three,
seen
it's
DC and Marvel do. Like, there's the Superman and the Justice League manga. Or no, I think it's Batman and the Justice League, and then Superman, some
yeah.
subtitle manga. There might also be a
Yeah,
standalone Batman manga
I
as
guess
well.
what I should have said is like instead of a comic, instead of like in addition
Mm-hmm.
to like this isn't like taking a comic and doing like a manga or doing like a manga. Like these are they've chosen with these characters to instead of being like we're not gonna like instead of doing like a Hot Wheels comic book, let's go to like
Mm-hmm.
Dynamite and do a Hot Wheels comic book. They were like no, we're gonna go to a manga company and do a Hot Wheels manga, and I think that's like
I mean,
an interesting development.
it makes so much sense to me. Not necessarily for like Barbie and Hot Wheels as like a step one, but manga is so huge. Like, for those who don't know, I work at a used bookstore. We buy and sell books. And every day, our manga shelves are just basically cleared out from everything we put out on them. Like, manga sells insane numbers. And that's like in the used market. The new manga market is also so huge.
Have you ever been
Like,
to a Barnes and Noble? You get like
yeah.
one thing for graphic novels, maybe two, and then you'll get like a wall's worth, which is probably like 8 to 10 of the same size things, full of manga. Like
Yeah.
it's wild.
Like, manga is so huge. I'm surprised that there haven't been more push it, because I think Dark Horse produces a number of manga. Um,
I think they do like American adaptations of manga. Essentially, they do like English versions, and
I
they do
believe
like
you, yeah. Um,
I think they take existing manga properties and like Americanize them, or
yeah,
not really
and
Americanize them. I think they just translate them essentially.
yeah, and I was it Oni who was doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oni is a I believe an Asian company.
I
So
believe so.
they do
And
at
they do
least.
a lot of like manga inspired things. Obviously,
Yeah.
Antarctic Press really
Oh yeah,
leans
Antarctic
on
Press is a
that kind
big
of
one.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
on that kind of manga style. So like, it's really I'm not surprised that there's that people are going for a manga adaptation instead of a comic one. Um,
I think the to play devil's
sure, yeah,
advocate,
yeah.
because let me play devil's advocate. I think the thing that people, at least from what I've heard, like run into with the well, why don't we just do this as a manga, to try to like is I think it's slightly a failure, or like I think there's a slight misinterpretation of like why manga succeeds when you go, oh, we'll
Mhm.
just do our Hot Wheels thing as a manga instead of a comic, and be like, and then it'll sell like a manga instead of like a comic. Like I think a big part of why manga, or at least in the U.S., I'm not going to speak to how
Yeah.
it sells so in the U.S. sells is the manga to anime pipeline, and like I think that's incredibly important to like, oh,
Hmm.
this property is a manga property that also is a anime
Yeah.
property, and it's this long running thing. You start at one and you read the whole series that everybody reads, and it also exists in anime form, and like that's like a big thing. They have this really
Yeah.
great system, which I think is why both anime and manga succeed so well. And in America, we don't have anything like we obviously comics are a big breeding ground, a test ground for adaptations.
Right.
We don't
Yeah.
have that like pipeline straight one-to-one adaptations. They're always going to happen like that. We don't have that, and so I think assuming that just because your thing is a manga and can like go on the manga shelf is gonna mean that it sells like those manga that do have that, I think is a little bit
Right.
incorrect.
Yeah. And I
But
mean, I'm not saying that I think that because they publish Hot Wheels as a manga, it's going to sell better. But I'm saying that I'm not surprised that companies are like
no,
a big company
absolutely.
like Mattel is going, let's try this as a manga instead,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
manga is like such a market domination right now. Like, so much of like graphic novel sales are dominated by manga sales. And especially with something like Mattel, which does have the resources to do like animated shows. Like, if they're Hot Wheels manga, they're probably more likely Barbie manga has like a devoted follower, a devoted following. They might make a Barbie anime, and
I think that would be the
yeah.
play, honestly. But I think it's almost in the wrong order to like wait and see. Like I think that they like this is Mattel. They should like I feel like toy companies should understand. Like it was back in the day. Like the big thing with toy companies was we'll make a product line and like as it's coming out, we'll announce the show.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're gonna make a show out of it. Like I feel like the correct move for this was almost to like right off the bat say, and then coming in the future will be anime adaptations of these two things. You know, obviously they might not have the funds to immediately go into that, but like I think that would be the play because then it'd be like, oh my god, yes, this is like just like like they're gonna have a manga and then they're gonna have an anime with like if they went like okay, it's gonna be a true anime with like a foreign animation studio and everything. Then I think like you get that pipeline, you get it all set up where it's like manga's coming in 2026, show coming in 2027 or 2028. Like boom.
Yeah,
get that,
I wonder if that's why they have such a runway there. I wonder if that's something they are developing right now, and they're just not ready to like they might be waiting to announce the Barbie anime when they have actual content to show from it.
And you could be right because maybe it is like okay when final order cutoffs for the first issues are going to be coming up, then it's like now we're going to drop trailers for the animated shows that are going to come in a year, and then I think that would be incredibly smart, especially because like even if the comics flop, you at the very least can sell a Barbie anime. Like you can sell a Barbie anime, especially with the Barbie movie like just happening. Like you can sell a Barbie anime. You can sell a Hot Wheels anime. Like honestly, I think you could sell that for sure.
I definitely agree, and I think if memory serves, I think after the success of Barbie, or no, it was wasn't there talks that Mattel was going to try to make like actual talks that they were going to try to make an Uno movie.
I
wonder if there was a Hot Wheel floating around in there.
I think Uno was one of the joke ones, but they were like they were dumb things they started talking about right after it. Like I think they are making like a Bratz movie. I think that was like maybe the logical step after it. Like
I don't think that does Mattel own Bratz?
Oh, maybe another company announced a Bratz. Somebody was making a Bratz movie. I'm pretty certain that was like one of the first things that like first dominoes to fall. But Mattel was like there was an announcement that Mattel was kicking around like a bunch of toy properties as potential movies, and then that got really shat on by people, and I don't know if that's actually stalled it because like if they just started working on it after the Barbie movie come out, none of them will probably be announced for like years. But yeah, no.
But like Hot Wheels is right up there.
Hot Wheels is not that far of a stretch from there.
Yeah. So like even if they're waiting for announcements around the Hot Wheels movie, if they're trying to kind of westernize the anime manga pipeline to like manga movie, that could be an interesting thing for them to be like shooting for.
I think that'd be a smart way to go about it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Interesting. Yeah.
But yeah.
Now, I guess here's my question, because
okay.
I know that it's not always the case, especially with like the longer running manga where they'll like bring in a lot of background artists and stuff. I know that like for some manga purists, the important thing is like the existence of the mangaka, like the writer artist who does.
Yeah, that's like a big thing.
Yeah. I wonder if Mattel is going to like respect that tradition, or if it's going to be.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
The fact that it specifically said manga style graphic novels. It's manga style graphic novels, and then specifically for the Hot Wheels one, it says Western style manga. So I don't think so. I think it'll be very much hiring like. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if we see a raid of Antarctic Press artists. But because bigger companies have done it. DC recently grabbed for the Nothing But Nightwing series, grabbed an Antarctic Press artist. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw like, here's what people who do this kind of thing are doing. But I wouldn't be shocked if we basically grabbed American artists who are who do manga style.
Yeah. Clearly, they're just all gonna get Dan Mora. He can pull it off. He can do all of it. He's basically a manga artist.
I would be shocked if DC doesn't have that man on like a 20-year exclusive contract.
They must.
That man is
they'll do a crossover.
They'll do a crossover. Hot Wheels crossing over with New Gods. Here you go. Why I went with New Gods? I don't know. Dan Moore's not even working on it, but I decided that would be the weirdest thing I could grab for the crossover.
I love it. Make it happen, DC. Make it happen, Mattel.
And like, don't tell me Ram V couldn't handle writing that crossover.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Barbie Barbie, very clearly,
Birds
there is
of
really
Prey
no
crossover. Come
choice.
on.
A Barbie has to cross over with the Atom Project, clearly.
Clearly. Jay's just got his most recent reads on the mind with the
I
Atom
didn't actually read
Project.
it yet.
So we don't know if
we don't know. I haven't read it yet. The only thing I have read so far, actually, this is pulling back the curtain because we're supposed to talk about this right after this. I've already read Mutant Nation. That's the only thing I've read from the past week. Yeah.
He pulled back the curtain. This is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
We better head right to the poll.
We're not recording the polls today.
Already read.
No, we'll be recording those in a couple days. So.
And you will see no difference between the way that this room and my clothes look right now and how they're about to look.
There's a good chance I won't be in the same room.
See ya in the future. Here we are, in totally the same clothing and lighting conditions as you just saw us.
Yes.
And we will definitely stay this way for the rest of the episode, for sure. We have some absolutely awesome polls to talk about today. We are going to be talking about Batman and Robin, number 17, Batman Dark Patterns, number 2. Oh, I pulled I pulled a sneaky on him and I started too quick. Mutant Nation, number 3. Living Hell, number 2. And The Lucky Devils, number 1. Now, just minutes ago, you may have heard us say we were going to be talking about Daredevil, Unleash Hell, but they didn't release digital copies of it. It turns out Marvel doesn't do digitals of their Red Band books.
Yeah.
And this is released only as a Red Band book, so RIP, didn't realize that until this morning when I went to go get a digital copy.
So we'll probably figure out the time
we'll
where
do
we have like a gap where we'll
2,
double up next month on issues 1 and 2 or something.
I'm sure we'll probably just double up next month.
Yeah, I'm sure this is still going to be a series that we will be reviewing on the podcast, but not today.
Not today. But Jay, that's of course not all that we picked up this week.
Yes,
what is true. On your pull list?
Let's see. I got another cover of Mutant Nation, of course.
Nice, classic. Big J energy.
I got so much of the Green Hornet Miss Fury first issue.
Oh my goodness.
We got all these nice boys because I love me some Green Hornet.
Is Miss Fury normally in a cat suit?
Yeah, I think that's her vibe, I think.
Okay. I believe you. Again, I know nothing about her.
My only context is if she was in Masks, and I don't remember well enough if she was. So if she was a minor character, I believe.
Fair enough.
Or somebody's gonna yell at me and be like, "No, she was very important." I'm like, I forgot. Then I'm sorry. Absolute Batman, number 4, of course.
Gotta look at that chonky boy.
We gotta do that for the absolute bonus episodes. Transformers 16.
Nice.
And TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures number 20, but that's all of mine. Do you have your list up for what's going to be?
I do have my list up, and it's going to be slim pickings outside of our pod books. It's going to be Absolute Batman number 4, which is even is a pod book, and then theoretically Moon Man number 6. But I feel like they keep pushing and adjusting that.
That's fine.
Which again, such cool art, such mid writing. That's fine.
No necessity there for you to throw shade in a book.
To be mean about. That's fine. But
one of these days we'll talk about it again when we do a celebrity comic tier list.
I'm still very excited for doing the celebrity tier list.
Maybe we'll do that for a tier list next month. We'll see.
Oh, fun. But Jay, of the 5 books we have, do you have thoughts on the order in which we will talk about them?
Well, we have to do the Batman books together.
Gotta do the Batman books together.
So let's start there. Yeah, we'll start there.
But and which one?
What? Oh, let's start with the normal one, Batman and Robin, and then we'll do Dark Patterns, and then why don't we go into? I think it makes sense to go into Mutant Nation to keep with the big characters, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
And then go jump over to Living Hell, and we'll finish out with the brand new number 1 of Lucky Devils. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. So let's go right to Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin, number 17. Terror in Arkham Tower. Desperate to question the Scarecrow about the recent plague of Memento killings, Batman must fight his way through a full-scale breakout at Arkham. But when Memento enters the fray and reveals his true form, Robin may be his father's only hope. The writer here is Philip Kennedy Johnson of Action Comics and Green Lantern War Journal. The artist is Javier Fernandez of Nightwing, Magneto, and King Spawn. The artist in the flashbacks is Carmine D. Oh no, I'm so sorry to our dear Italian friend, Carmine Di Giandomenico of Flash and Batgirl. The colorist is Marcello Maiolo, and the letter is Steve Wands. Jay.
Yes.
Batman and Robin. We really liked it when we started, and I think that we've been a little trepidatious as we've gone along.
Yeah, I think last issue the art change hit us hard, and we are back here we're back to Javier Fernandez, and it is even more wild to have Damian looking like a 12-year-old again.
Yeah,
after we just had an issue of him looking like a buff 16-year-old, and it's like, why did nobody in editorial say maybe in the one random issue in the middle of the series he shouldn't look completely different than he's going to look in all the other issues? I don't know how that wasn't caught. I'm going to move on now, but I do think that's a big oversight to let that slide through, because it's super weird when you go right back in the next issue.
For sure.
But moving on from that, there's a lot of cool stuff in this issue. We open actually on flashbacks, which I don't think we had been doing. I think they had been more in the middle before. And then we get to just the trippy. There's a lot of these trippy.
God, so good, angular pages.
Yeah, which really work well for the vibes. I mean, I think we talked about this with Javier Fernandez's artwork in the first couple issues. The vibe, the Batmaning vibes are really great.
Yes.
And I like a lot of the character moments in this. My one trepidation is I'm slightly not in love with the idea of Damian as an advocate for the Batman is responsible for villains thing. It's this man was a part of the League of Assassins. He knows what's out there. He's always been very there's a lot of evil out there in the world. It feels like a hard left. And I liked a lot of the stuff that we're doing with him in the hospital and him looking for different ways to do things. I think it's a normal overcorrection from when you were a little bit too harsh of a vigilante. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't like him coming back with this angle of him blaming Batman. It doesn't feel like it fits his character. It feels like more of a, basically any of the other Bat kids, except for maybe Tim. It feels weird for Tim too, I think. But it feels like it would make sense for Jason or for Dick. And we also get a very awesome issue ender that I do not want to spoil, but I am
so good.
Excited for. But yeah, it's a solid issue, but that's my one thing that's throwing me.
Yeah, no, that was the part that really stuck with me as well, because it also it's one of my pet peeves when in comics the characters bring up the kind of suspension of disbelief as a reader. We as readers are okay, yeah, we can tell that there's not a long history of the Joker in Gotham. So from a meta reading perspective, it's okay, all this kind of happening at the same time, and then it becomes one of those stupid arguments of oh well, if Batman wasn't Batmaning, then there wouldn't be a Joker. And I hate when they bring that stuff up in the comics, because it feels like it legitimizes a lot of the kind of really just weak takes of oh, look at us, we're logicking around this narrative. So I was quite bothered by Damian bringing that up, and like you said, it's really weird for it to be Damian, and it's also very weird to me that it came almost as a result of him reading Thomas Wayne's journals. He's look at what a normal childhood you have, and now Gotham is weird. Well, Damian, I don't think Bruce was out in the Narrows when he was, a little society boy. I don't think Thomas Wayne would have, seen Killer Croc. So, that whole thing gave me quite a bit of pause. Like you said, all of the Batmaning is such great art from Javier Fernandez. I was weirdly a little less sold on his Robining, like specifically when Damian was in his Robin costume. I was a little iffy on how he was looking. Like I think that his mask was kind of
The mask. I thought.
funky on his
I thought
face.
that's what you were. Yeah, the
Yeah.
mask's got. It's weird because it feels like there's like literal light coming from it a lot of the times, which is a little weird.
It also like doesn't always connect over his nose. And I think that masks, like I'm huge Spider-Man mask fan. I love a good giant eye mask. I think that it's really emotive and fun.
It's interesting because I really think it's a this issue thing because I remember us back in issue 1 when he was in his civilian form and put the mask on. I remember us gushing about how awesome that looked. So it feels like it's a very specific thing.
Yeah, so a weird little turn on this. Yeah. But like you said, the character stuff is super fun. I really love. I'm trying to decide if it's too deep in. Just kind of Bruce's Brucing, like being the way that he is really great. We had a weird little insertion from from Oracle. And it's like, okay, I feel like we could have seen her, but that's all right. So I love that Babs is there, and I'm hoping that she like becomes more involved because I think especially when it comes to like kind of detectiving cases, I think she's a great resource to use, especially when it's not just Gotham focused. It's like, use Oracle. Let her.
No, I don't need to. I'm not going to take us on a whole nother tangent, but it's fine.
But yeah, it's still a really fun series. I think that Philip Kennedy Johnson has a lot of great ideas. I just think that this issue specifically, there are a few little bits of minutiae that kind of made me stutter. So it's not my favorite issue of Batman and Robin, but I still like the series quite a bit.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. But in any case, do we want to keep talking about Batman and jump over to Batman Dark?
Let's keep talking about Batman.
Batman Dark Patterns number 2. As the mysterious Wound Man's body count rises higher and higher, the Dark Knight's detective must descend into the festering depths of Gotham's past to uncover the secret truth at the heart of Wound Man's crimes. The writer of the series is Dan Waters of Nightwing, Lucifer, and the Six Fingers. The artist is Hayden Sherman of Absolute Wonder Woman, Chicken Devil, and Detective Comics. The colorist is Triona Farrell, and the letterer is Frank Kvetovich. I am very sorry, Frank. Katie, talk to me about Batman Dark Patterns. I think we're both pretty high on the first issue of this.
Like super original villain concept, which is super duper fun. Like I love when someone like goes nutso when added to the Batman mythos, because this is fucked up and weird in a way that I think is so Batman tone. I absolutely love the Wound Man conceptually, and I really like what we get plot-wise with the Wound Man in this one, like the reveal that I will be very hush-hush about. So super duper fun. You're holding it up, so I have to like immediately jump to it. God damn, I love Hayden Sherman's art so much. I think that they do like really like I feel like I feel the Wound Man. Like he looks disgusting in such a horrible way, where like the kind of like mass of nails on him feels like so disgusting, and like I'm physically revolted by the Wound Man, which is what the Wound Man is going for. So like I'm so here for it. They continue to experiment with like fun little page layouts where it never feels like I'm just looking at a bunch of boxes. And obviously there are artists who do phenomenal things while keeping to just like the kind of box layout. Because even with composition within boxes, you can get absolutely crazy. But I feel like Hayden Sherman pages, especially lately, have felt so like distinct. We got in this one a page where the layout has like a Batman silhouette in it, and I was like, I recognize that play from Chicken Devil. You did that exact same thing. Yeah. In Chicken Devil, he had a page that had like the same setup where it was the chicken head with the devil horns. I'm like, that's cute. Yeah. I love this. I also think that the colorist is really phenomenal on this. I've really enjoyed the like super contrasty stuff, because this book deals a lot with kind of like the shadow and the color, and it's a pretty limited color palette within that as well, so stuff really pops off the page. It's a book that really creates atmosphere for itself, and I think that's really, really phenomenal. I'm trying to think if I have any particular drawbacks. I think that I mentioned to Jay off pod. There's like one line where they're like, "Oh, comic books have lied to you about how like or not formaldehyde, how not cyanide. What's the
Carbon monoxide, right? Or
no
no,
no no
no.
no the
I know it's chloroform. Chloroform. That was the
chloroform.
one.
There
It
we
was
go.
like
There we
chloroform.
go.
I don't know why
It's like,
it took me 2 tries, but I got there.
you got there. It's like comics have lied to you about how chloroform works. I'm like, yeah, because like it's narratively convenient for them to lie to me. Like I like where it ended up
I
going.
think it's a little rough for a Batman book to bring that up because I was like,
Right?
yeah, you also lie to us about Batman not killing people who he leaves unconscious in an alleyway. Like, don't start going to what knocking people out do because it breaks Batman as a concept. Like, you don't want to
Exactly.
play in that lane. It's not good for you.
And like I feel like they didn't need that line to say like, "Oh, I overdosed him." Like
Yeah.
you could have done the I had to guess at the
Yeah.
dosage and then still get like the OD and him and having to take him to
Yeah.
the morgue without the little like snippy line in there where it was just one of those things that really pulled me out.
Yeah.
But Jay, how are you feeling on Dark Patterns?
I agree. There, it's phenomenal. It's you talked about like it's a very shadowy Batman, and like that works so well because both like it's literally shadowy in the art, but he's a very shadowy Batman like conceptually too, in the fact that we're not like getting a lot of him as like Bruce Wayne or as like a person. He's very much like this very Batman figure in this book. And I do like the Wound Man a lot conceptually. Where I'm landing with my slight annoyance at this issue is in the fact that the Wound Man only really works if you're willing to let him challenge Batman as a concept, and they're really not. I think it was too easy. It was because the Wound Man pushes to the edge of Batman's no-kill rule to the point where it gets absurd. You know, it's like, oh,
Yes, yeah.
you can't touch this guy and you can't do anything to him without killing him, and thus maybe Batman as a concept is limited, and that's a really interesting concept. And then it's just so easy in this issue
That's
to
super fair.
deal with it. And I'm like, that you created this really interesting problem for him to solve, where there's this villain who he can't do anything to without potentially killing him, and then boom, issue 2 of I think this is a 12 issue series. This is like a long thing, and like in issue 2, you've already dealt with that, and that feels really rough to me. And I get why, because it puts us in an interesting place, and that's great. And a lot of the actual like the writing and the art and the story, it's all great, but I hate that I think it lands in that, especially when it is like calling out some of that comic book stuff. I'm like, you just like glossed over, made it so easy for Batman in a way that's like, it's one of those things where like a lot of people like don't put your hero in a challenging, a situation because you don't want to challenge their ideals. It's like the don't make Superman have to kill situation. Like don't put him in a situation where he has to kill. And I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do agree with that when the writer's solution is just, no, they just get out of it like magically.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
no, that's
I don't
super
like
fair.
that.
Like the fact that you're able to, you can't really touch him, but you can put him in the Batmobile and drive is like, I don't know, brother. I think that one of those screws is going into his brain, maybe. Like one pothole and you're done for. And don't you tell me that Gotham City has good, pothole filling infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my little thing on this issue, and it's not like, again, it's something about the story being bad. It's just like, if you want to put your hero in a challenging situation, I think you need to actually commit to it instead of just going, here's this impossible situation, and it's he's Batman.
That's
so
super
prepare.
fair. Like I don't think this is going to be the last interaction between Batman and the Woman.
I don't think so either, but I feel like when we already have this solution so early, it's like, oh, okay,
it sets an odd precedent for
exactly.
sure. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah. Still a very good issue.
Yeah. But are we ready to move away from the shadows and into Area 51?
Let's do it.
Mutant Nation number 3. It's all hands on deck for the EPF as Metalhead infiltrates the central data center and sets his sights on a new target, Madame Null. Meanwhile, Raphael fights to free Mondo, Seymour, and Pigeon Pete. But how did they come to be captives in the first place? Area 51 holds infinite secrets, and when Director Bronze is briefed on the security breach, is it not Bronze? You've laughed.
No, it's just I love the
The
like
way they spell
wrong
it is really
spelling of
good.
bronze. Yeah,
Yeah,
for a name
it's
it makes more sense.
beautiful.
It's very funny to me. Keep going.
And when Director Bronze is briefed on the security breach, his command decision will introduce a new player who's poised to deliver a striking blow to the invaders. Escape isn't looking easy in part 3 of Tom Waltz and Vincenzo Federici's Attack on Area 51. Plus, in the third installment of our backup story, Karai's powers remain unchecked and an impossible order forces Casey Jones into a corner. The time has come for him to decide where his allegiance lies. The writers here are Tom Waltz of TMNT, The Last Ronin, and Wolverine Bloodhunt, and Eric Burnham of Red Sonja, TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures, and Ghostbusters. The artists are Vincenzo Federici of TMNT, Jennifer Blood, and Red Sonja, Jose Haro of Dungeons and Dragons, Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer, and Grim Fairy Tales, and Matteo Santaluca of TMNT, Dial H, and American Vampire. The colorists are Rhonda Pattinson and Marco Lico, and the letter is Russ Wooten. And
So sorry they had to do all that, Katie.
That's not fair. Tell us about your feelings, Mr. Turtle Boy.
This was so fucking good. This is, as we get, and as it typically goes with I think Tom Waltz books, he's great at that, like ramping up, and every issue builds the stakes, and then this is when we've hit this is the penultimate issue of the arc, and things are fully reached a crescendo. There's incredible action all the way through, great characterization. We get all these moments where it's just those like slight little turns where it's like, oh, this is going, oh no, oh, this is going, oh no, and it just has that great vibe to it. I also love a good like infiltrating turtle, it's a great vibe having that break into Area 51. And then, there's a lot of good stuff with Metalhead in this issue with Pepperoni. I love that he just calls Pepperoni dinosaur constantly. Like, that's a fun little thing. I was
losing it over Pepperoni's expressions. Vincenzo Federici, you mad lad.
Yeah. And then you get to the backup, and things reach a crescendo, and the backup went hard, and we're starting to see, I think, how we get to where we are in the main book. And that's, like, the great thing here is it really is starting to, like, connect these dots of, like, oh, this is how we get there. Oh, this is how we get there. And I really, really love that. So both main story and backup story were just phenomenal. And I this is my favorite issue so far of Mutant Nation. This was so good.
It's super duper duper rad. As kind of it has been consistent for me with Mutant Nation, I am so in love with the backup. I have read so little Karai in my life. I've read
great.
so little Turtles, but oh my god, she's so cool. I love her so much. Like her line of like, I've been to the afterlife, I know it exists. I'm gonna make sure that everyone I kill fears the Foot Clan for eternity is so fucking metal. I loved that. All the spooky shit she has going on is super cool and is illustrated so well. I am having so much fun reading
Backup. Is the man.
Yes. And the main story is super duper fun as well. Like I said, Pepperoni has been just sending me. It's phenomenal. I love the way that I almost just called him Mark Waltz for some reason. I have no idea why. The way that Tom Waltz balances both like action and seriousness while also throwing in like little bits of funny shit. Like Pigeon Pete.
Pigeon Pete is very funny, man.
Exactly. Like he keeps introducing himself and be like, "Hi, Pete," and it never ruins the tone, which is such a talent to be able to like.
He's so unaware of all
exactly.
Things.
Yeah,
man has so little brain power.
But I feel like that's the type of thing where it could ruin the tone. And like be like, okay, now we're gonna be stupid for a second, but it never feels that way. It never feels like it ruins the tone. I think because the other characters remain on the same level of intensity. Like, it's not like they stop and stare at him and go, well, that just happened. Tom Waltz is really good at, like, having them interact but not lose their own, like, their own place in, like, the emotional journey that's happening. So I really enjoyed that as well. It's something that's been consistent across.
He's very good at balancing all of those different elements and the different characters, because he's very, like, he just knows all these characters so well. So he's very good at staying true to what they should do in any given circumstance. So Raph isn't going to suddenly stop because Pigeon Pete's being a dumbass. Right, like he's gonna keep going, and the rest of the mutant animals are still going to be concerned, even though Pigeon Pete's being stupid. And it's just, it works so freaking well.
Yeah.
And it's great to have the mutant animals back in here because I love some mutant animals.
I like that you said I love some of them. Do you
No,
not love
I meant
the-
because only some of them are here.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
the rest of them are free. I did not phrase that great. The rest of them are on a mutant island.
I was
I hope we go back too soon.
ready for your mutant animals hot takes.
No.
Do you have one to share with the class? Just a
A
real quick
hot take?
Yeah, about the mutant animals.
I don't know if this is a hot take. They're the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like there's my
That's
take.
not a hot take. I want to gossip about one of them.
I don't know that I have
hate.
a hot take. They're pretty good.
Rude. All right,
yeah.
I won't.
Seymour Guts is he's there. He's sometimes is just kind of there. There's my hot take.
Okay. I won't force a hot take out of you. Are you ready to continue on with reviewing with Living Hell?
Living Hell number 2. His life upended, Jerome finds himself with the abhorrent job of shepherd. The first demons on his list? The Sato sisters. Jerome must become the thing he once most hated and feared in order to protect his daughter. But can he do what must be done? And who will be next on his list? This is a writer-artist, Caitlin Yarsky, and the letter... Oh, Caitlin Yarsky, who's worked on, by the way, Wonder Woman, Black Hammer, and Coyotes, and the letter is Clayton Cowles. It's been a little bit, but we really enjoyed the first issue of this series. We finally have gotten issue 2. Katie, talk to me about it.
I enjoyed this so much. I think that Caitlin Yarsky's art is something that really fits a kind of like close character story like this, where it's like, yeah, we are like the real meat of this story comes from how we feel about Jerome. And she manages to pack a lot of emotion in with her art. She's got a very expressive style, which is phenomenal for this. And she's also just having fun with these demons. Yeah. Like the Sato sisters being these demons who like own a funeral home and eat the bodies of the people there. And I think also
discussions about it,
right? And also, I believe specifically eat the bodies for people who can't afford a burial. So, like, they provide like a nice service pro bono because they're like, oh, we get a meal out of it, which I doubt they tell these people. But I like that it seems that with the demons we've got, they're often not. They're not going around and like burning villages, So it sets up this really, vibe, right? Yeah, exactly. It sets up this really great dynamic where Jerome has to be a shepherd to keep his daughter safe and like stay alive, but he doesn't necessarily, even from a narrative point of view, because he being a demon may, already have qualms about killing other demons.
Yeah.
But from like an outsider, a reader point of view, it's like, oh no, like the Sato sisters didn't necessarily need to die. They weren't like really fucking with their community all that much. And same with I'm gonna zip my lips on that because I think it was a bit of a turn, a little bit of a spoiler. But yeah, we see the demons are like just kind of vibing. So it's already setting up this idea of maybe demons don't deserve to die, and maybe what Jerome is doing is bad and wrong, which is going to be, I think, a very exciting plot thread to follow. And I like his daughter a lot. I think that we did suffer a little bit for having such a gap between this issue and the last.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I remembered a lot of the end of the previous issue.
That's when his wife sees him, right?
Yeah. So I think I suffered a little. And then he
tells her everything. I feel like there was a thing where he was like, this. I feel like the cliffhanger was him saying, "I'll tell you everything."
I think so too. So that kind of cliffhanger where we then jump forward a little bit and
I'm not a fan of not immediately picking up a cliffhanger.
But it's a little extra sticky when you have a gap between the issues.
Yeah, agreed.
But that was like my big qualm with it. Otherwise, I think that it's super fun. It's really a really like, wonderful art style that I like a whole lot, and I like the characters quite a bit. Jay, how'd you feel?
I agree with you on pretty much all of it. I really enjoy a lot of the character stuff. We get more time with like the kids in this one, which is very interesting, and because I think obviously his relationship with his daughter is going to be kind of a big thing in this
Oh,
series.
yeah.
It feels like that's going to be kind of the linchpin of a lot of what's going on. And the action is just also very cool. Or like maybe action's wrong, but like the demoning.
There's some action. There's some action.
But like in
Less
general, just the demoning. When the demons go demon, it's very well illustrated and very intriguing. And yeah, I like a lot of like the plot beats of this issue. I think it's a good, second issue to move us to kind of where we need to go. My one little gripe actually plays on like your favorite thing, and that I agree that it's great that it's this like nuance that the demons are maybe not bad and he shouldn't be doing this. I wish we saw at least a little bit of like guilt from him, or like a little bit of like inner turmoil as he was doing it. He feels a little like too like, I get that he's on the like, oh, I need to do this for my daughter train, but I wish, especially with the one that you didn't want to spoil, like I wish there was more
that's fair.
hesitancy there. I don't like how easily he's doing it right now.
Yeah. Like I think that to kind of talk around the one that we don't want to spoil, like he comes in with a bit of remorse, but it never feels like he's debating whether or not to do it. Yeah.
I'd like a little waiver. I'd like a little waiver.
Fair. That's super valid.
I think that because again, the characters have been such a strong, especially in the first issue. Like I think the kids get good characterization here. I think his characterization, and I think even the other character that we were talking about had great characterization again in this issue. And as did the two, the Sato sisters. I think his characterization was stronger in the first issue.
I agree with that, definitely.
I think Jerome didn't really get as much to do character-wise in this issue.
Yeah, he wasn't as center stage.
Yeah.
Which I did miss, because I like him quite a bit.
Yeah. But still a very, very good issue, and I'm digging this series. It's another one that's pretty unique, as we talk about books that can still be unique in a very packed industry.
Yeah, we love it.
Love it.
Are you ready to go from one devil to the next and talk about Lucky Devils #1?
Let's do it.
Lucky Devils #1. The Lucky Devils is a tale of two rebellious demons who decide to start a revolution in hell, and two ordinary 20-something humans they're going to manipulate to do it. A cheeky, satirical look at good and evil, The Lucky Devils explores Faustian bargains and temptation in a rip-roaring, hilarious new way. The writer here is Charles Soule of 8 Billion Genies, Daredevil, and Star Wars. The artist is Ryan Brown of 8 Billion Genies, Curse Words, and God Hates Astronauts. The colorist is Kevin Nipstein, and the letterer is Crank, which I think is a studio, right?
I don't know. It just... this says Christopher Crank, so no, it's a person.
Oh,
the book
okay, never mind. Crank. Christopher Crank.
Yeah. Who I think goes by Crank in like the comic space a lot of the time.
Honestly, iconic. Love it.
Yeah.
Jay, Lucky Devils, new #1.
New #1.
How we feeling?
I think that this was a very, very solid first issue. I was really, really drawn in. It's also long, I think. It feels long.
It feels chunky, yeah.
Yeah, it feels very chunky. Like it basically feels like it has a whole issue building up these normal characters and their kind of shitty lives. And then I showed it like a second ago that we hit this fantastic double, back-to-back splash. And then we go into the devil side and we get like basically a full issue detailing their, kind of stuff. As well as them talking to our characters, which is Star and what's the guy's name?
Oh shit.
It's Star and it's the dude has a name.
Does he though?
He does. I think it's like Cam or something.
Cam,
like that.
It's definitely Cam.
Yeah, Cam. And yeah, I just think that because of that, they were able to do really what you need out of first. Like they gave you everything you needed out of first issue. Here are our main characters. Here is the concept. And here are, is a ton of world building around that concept, which is also awesome because I love good world building. So we know how hell works in this world. We know how devils work in this world. We know all of this. And getting that in the first issue instead of, here's the reveal of what's going on, and then the second issue will explain everything, just gives you all of that up front. So you already know if you're interested in the concept or not. Yeah. And for me, it's a resounding yes. I think that Ryan Brown's artwork is also just like perfect for this. It's a very grimy human.
I was going to say it's a little grimy boy
coming in. Yeah. And it just works really, really well. And Charles Soule just characterized, I think, everybody so strongly that I'm ready to really buy into these characters in this world. So yeah, I really enjoyed this.
It was fun. I think that maybe the way that they structured the oversized issue wasn't my favorite because I really like what it let them do, which was like you go through this bad day with both of these characters, and then the reveal that like the devils are causing the bad day is like a really great kind of payoff for that. But I almost feel like we went through too much of the day. Like I liked the characters, but I kind of felt like I was treading water in that first half, and then having the kind of separate second chunk where then we go back to hell with the demons and get kind of what they've got going on, which I'll be a little more hush hush about.
Yeah.
But kind of that the two halves I didn't love being their own halves, but I really liked the middle chunk, especially where they were because we have these conversations happening with Cam and Star, and we get what I thought was a really fun device that I don't think you see all that often, which is two simultaneous conversations where the assumption is that
they're having like the same
conversation, which I thought was a really efficient and fun way to do this in a way that bonded Star and Cam, because I'm presuming they'll eventually meet. I could be wrong. We don't really get any sort of.
I assume so. We know the devils are kind of connected. We know that there's like reasons for the people that be connected. So I think that's fair.
I presume they're gonna meet, and I think that did a lot of good groundwork to show like, oh, they are like they're cut from the same cloth. So I think that was really effective. I just think maybe I dragged a little in the front and dragged a little in the back, and when they were doing like efficient things in the middle is when I enjoyed the comic the most.
That's fair. I really liked the structure. I thought it was a very cool way to do it, and I enjoyed it thoroughly all the way through. But that's gonna take us to the end of I think our individual reviews.
Yes.
So do you want to hit your poll?
Oh gosh.
Get in a rec and recommend a book.
I am going to give my pull list rec to Batman Dark Patterns #2. I quite like this series. I'm such a sucker for the artwork, and I think that it has rad covers, and it's going to be a really it reminds me of when I was first getting into comics, and I would pick up like Batman the Penguin Affair, and it's those used to be within like larger ongoings, but it feels like we're getting like just a really nice new Batman story that doesn't feel like it's trying to kind of retell things.
Very fair. Fair.
How about you? I have a feeling of what yours may possibly be.
So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutination issue 3. Lucky Devils was pretty close. I thought that was a very, very strong first issue, but this was just everything I love about the Turtles in one issue. We get great Ninja Clan stuff on the one half. We get great, Raph Ninja infiltration on the other half, with also great sci-fi elements from Metalhead. So it's all the elements of the Turtles I love in one issue. So this was an easy recommendation for me.
Phenomenal.
Pick up Mutination #3. Pick up Dark Patterns issue 2. But we have one more segment left. Katie, tell me what it is.
It's time for us to go to the Creator Corner. And here we are in the Creator Corner. This is a world of our own design where we can sit back, relax, talk about books, talk about being writers. And today we're going to talk. I know he's shocked by the little change to the intro, but guess what? That was your hint at what the Creator Corner is. We're going to talk about world building today.
Love world building.
Your face just fell so dramatically, and I know it's because you were doing a bit, and then you were being sincere.
Yeah,
but it was.
I'm genuinely happy. I really enjoy world building. It's
world
like one of my favorite things.
Fun. So I want to kind of.
You never put me and Katie together on a book that we're going to work together for, because we will world build so far beyond what is actually necessary for the book.
Yeah, it's just fun.
It's fun.
Like, it's pure creativity. And I kind of want to split this into 2 separate sections of world building.
I want to split into 3 sections.
Oh, okay.
So
the first one is kind of a world within the real world, if you know what I mean. Like, so on the one, you can have world building that's happening within the parameters of like the real world.
Yes.
But then there's like the more the more sci-fi fantasy world building of like, okay, yeah, this is like a completely different land. This is the Tolkien
Yeah,
of it
I prefer
all.
them.
Me too, but I feel
I
like
prefer to
it's
make shit up than have to research shit.
same.
Yeah.
But I think that the place of research based world building is also a very important place. So I kind of wanted to start with
Yeah.
that one because it's a
It's
little
clearly
less
important.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's a big. I spent like all of last week spending like tens of hours researching for a like historical thing I had to do for a
yeah,
book. Yeah.
which is like a good time in its own right.
Yeah.
Uh, so when we're talking about world building, what do you think? I know world building is so nebulous. It's so like it's one of those
All
things where
encompassing.
it's on the fucking label what it is. You're building the world of your book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how would you what do you think are the tenets of world building?
Yeah. Well, I guess it means I don't know fully what you mean by tenants here, so I'm just going to take this and how I'm interpreting
Sure.
it. Um, I think that kind of you have where your story is actually going to take. And I don't mean like setting wise. I mean very much in that like, oh, is this taking place in the real world? Is it taking place,
Mhm.
in another world? And then like, where is it taking place within that world? And like more of like a, you know, I guess atmosphere sense of like, is
Mhm.
this taking place like in a middle class society, or not necessarily like in the middle class portion of the society?
Yeah.
Is this like a lower class that, because like that's kind of a big part of your world building, even though like all aspects will exist in your world, like you're going to probably siphon it to whatever your story is focused on.
Mhm.
So at least because we're starting in the real world here, I'm taking that from my hands. It's basically like establishing the parts of the real world that are relevant to your world, and then the differences or changes or whatever its specifics exist
Mhm.
within your world. And then beyond that, the final thing is which bits of that are actually relevant to not just like the concept you're telling, but the literal story of what's going to be in the issues that you're telling. Because odds are not everything you're going to have figured out is actually going to be in the book.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that that's like a really good place to start with world building. Um being able to figure out like what the rules of your world are. Like
I
I know
love
that
rules.
you're a big rules guy. He this man loves some good universe rules. But like
You
figuring out the
do.
rules of the world
Yes.
and the setting of the world are kind of like
Yeah.
two, yin yang commingling
How do
boys.
you do the yang thing? It's like
A
that, right?
little
That's
like
kind of
that,
what
a
it
little
looks
like
like.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like fingers holding fingers. Uh
The six fingers.
yes, that's right. And the one hand. Um there we go. Uh, so
Got the
when
two.
you're building out, still talking generally about world building, so not necessarily in a modern setting. When
Oh no.
you're, when you're going into a project, do you think that it's like paramount to have a strong sense of like the rules of your world first, or are you someone who will start writing and then as the rules come up, that's when the rules kind of get set into stone?
A strong answer, but it doesn't fully land in either one of your
That's
camps,
so
which is
fair.
basically that I will usually come up with the story before I've
Hmm.
established those rules, as in I will start like plotting and outlining. But typically, before I'm actually scripting out the issues, I have all my rules and my world building done. Because I don't usually like, and sometimes it still comes up that like you'll hit something, you'll be
Hmm.
like, oh wait, I didn't really figure out how the hell that works, and I need to do
Right.
that. I don't like building things out. And this is funny because that project that I literally was doing all that research for is actually an example where like somebody who was working on it with me, like basically we were debating something and they were like, well, you can just write it and then we'll decide, because shouldn't make that big of a difference in like we are talking about the captions. It's like it shouldn't
Yeah.
make that big of a difference in the captions either way. And I was like, no, it makes 100% difference in the way I write the captions, because it's two different things. And thus, depending on which way the world, for us it's literally like I guess it's the framing device of the
Hmm.
story, which is important to world building. If
Right.
your
Yeah.
thing is a literal fictional story in itself, you can be more fantastical. you know that's spoilers. That's basically what we were talking about, is if it was going to be a like story within a story, essentially,
Hmm.
which was very relevant to me.
Yeah.
before I started scripting. Some people will probably find it to be the opposite, but I'm big on, the world building. Where exactly comes my process might move a bit, whether it's before plotting or after plotting, depending on if what came to my mind first was a world and a concept or a story.
Super fair,
But
yeah.
I will 99 out of 100 times have the world very built out before I'm actually scripting my issues.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that I tend to come at world building from a very like character first, kind of my like almost inside out perspective, where
You're a
it's
big
like
character person.
I'm a big character person. I love a good character.
Yeah.
And so the rules that I make for my world are almost always going to be in either service to or disservice to my character. So whether that's the main character or like a side character or whatever, whoever's like most relevant first also. Like the character that makes me think of the thing first is gonna kind of have the
Yeah.
most influence over that thing. So it's less so that I'll say, ah yes, spells require a material component and a somatic component.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be, oh, I have a character who, I don't know, had her tongue cut out by her stepmother. And so I think it's cool if she can't really do a somatic component because she can't, or a verbal component, she can't really talk. So maybe she like, this is very stupid on just initial brush, but like maybe her sign language creates magic. And so then it's like, okay, that means it's a requirement that there are verbal components for other people because she is like the exception to the rule of that.
Yeah.
So like I kind of let the world, it feels almost like wandering around in a video game when you like, the shadowy parts of the map, and then once you get close enough to it, it like
Yeah.
blossoms out.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, once I get over there, then it figures
Yeah.
itself out.
I think that's a very valid thing too, because like, well, even if you think you have like the world built, odds are your
Oh
world
yeah.
building isn't going to be literally building out an entire
Yeah.
world. Like you're not building out a planet Earth where it's like this is going on in this country, and like you're not doing that. So if all of a sudden your characters are going to another country, where I do a lot of sci-fi stuff, so where my brain goes like all of a sudden they're going to a new planet, or they're going to a different part of space, or I need all of a sudden they're in like space court, and I need to figure out how space court works. Like
Right.
there is always, I think, no matter how much you figure out, especially if you're doing like multiple issues or something, and you're like getting somewhere that you didn't initially foresee yourself getting, there's, I think, always going to be more world building to do as the story expands and as you keep going. I don't think you're ever going to sit there and be like, I have built out an entire. Actually, I should not say this because I have already seen people who've gone way too far with world building before they've like written a single word, and they have like Bibles and Bibles of how the world works. You don't do that.
Because then you're also hemming yourself in.
You're typically going to be, that far out that when it's going to be impossible for you to touch on something that you have to then do more world building for. It's introducing a new character, and it's like, I'll go high fantasy here. It's like, oh, they're from a race that you hadn't touched before. Now you need to build out the lore of like what that race is, and like what their story is. Like all of a sudden you're gonna have a dwarf now, and you have to build out the dwarves, and so now you're gonna decide that your dwarves, instead of being diggy diggy hole dwarves, are Sky Island dwarves, and they come from the Sky Islands.
And that's also interesting because you have to figure out why you haven't seen dwarves before.
And it's because they're up in the Sky Islands.
It's because they're up in the sky.
They're not down.
Like,
not down
you thought you would have seen dwarves because we're hanging out in caves? You're small-minded. They're in the sky.
Yeah. They're in the sky. This is my mind of what the Hunger in the Dusk dwarves would be, because they're reversing everything.
Yes,
so
perfect.
They're sky dwarves.
Cloud dwarves.
G. Willow Wilson. All I ask.
You can have that one for free.
Slight story credit. Just a little bit.
Sky dwarves.
Sky dwarves. Story credit. Joseph Jasinowski. That's it. All I ask.
Come on, G. Willow Wilson. Throw him back. Just kidding. But yeah, so world building is like super fun, super imaginative process. What do you think?
I get some people to Bibles upon Bibles. It can become very fun, and I think for a lot of people, it's both more fun and less work than actually like writing out a script for something. So that's why you have people who are stuck in the world building stage forever.
Yeah. So what do you think are some signs that you've kind of, you've built enough of the world you need to get writing? Like, when do you think it becomes too much? world
when you
building
start,
and not enough.
I mean, the easiest thing is when you're sitting there and you start doing things and you're like, well, maybe if this book gets like 3 sequels, I'll be at this thing. Or if you're like, you know, there's no way that this is going to come up, but, I know that this character's dad's brother was actually this bandit that killed somebody 50 years ago. And, like, that's important to me. Like, when you're starting to hit on things that, like, are so tangential to your story, and I think it can happen very naturally because it sounds funny when you sit there, but like when you're in your head and you're like, okay, who's this? Oh, who's their father? Like, okay, their father was this bandit. Oh, so he probably ran with some rough people, and you just like keep building out from there, and you're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I just needed the father for one scene at the beginning of the book. Why do I now know who his father is? I don't need that. I went too far. But it can very naturally happen just by like climbing the rope to the next thing and the next thing. But I think it's when you're like, okay, I've gotten like 6 degrees away from my protagonist or my protagonists.
Yeah.
And now this is not necessary anymore. So I think that's typically where.
Yeah, I think that that degree of separation from your protagonist and from your story is
plot,
like a really good measure of that, where it's like, okay, once I'm 1 degree of separation away, that's too much. Like, do we need to know why the dwarves are in the sky? No. That's where they are, and that's like the universe we're in. That will be accepted.
Yeah.
And obviously, that 1 degree of separation is fun. So have fun with your degree of separation.
Yeah.
But then you get to like, okay.
I'll say one degree sometimes necessary. If you're like, oh, like we need to know where, we need to know, what the father's profession is because it's going to end up being important because the first scene is the father coming back from work or something. It's like, okay, maybe we do need to get 1 degree away just so that we can figure out this little thing.
That's fair. Yeah. But that 2nd degree is when you've entered.
That's when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
That's when you're in trouble.
Yes. No, I think that's a really good way to think about it. A really good way to like hem yourself in of thinking of like, why is this detail I've just come up with relevant to what I'm going to eventually
and
be
you
writing?
cannot even, if you cannot, like, even if you're straight, if you cannot find a way that it's going to be relevant in the story, like every now and then just sit down about the thing you just wrote on your Bible doc, and if you cannot come up with a reason that you need to know it, you've gone too far.
You've gone too far. Like, I feel like I weirdly fall into that trap when I'm doing D&D world building, because that's a situation where I don't know what all of the like other collaborators are going to be doing, what the players are going to be doing. So it's like, oh, maybe they do need to know about the dwarf history. But there are well, I mean, there can be collaborators, but there aren't random PCs in your comic book. You know what's relevant, and you know what you're going to need, and you're always able to go back and make those decisions, which I think is an important
thing.
Yeah. But world building is super duper fun. It can very much get out of hand, but honestly, that's fun too, especially if you like have someone you're world building with. Like, it's a super duper good time, and as long as it's not stopping you from actually writing your thing, then you're fine. Provided what you want to do is write your thing.
Fall into, like a lot of people sit there and they get really stuck on the world, and like when you're in these like good resources for people, by the way, Facebook and Reddit groups about finding collaborators for comics. When you're in those places, very, very good places to be. You'll often see writers come forth with like, I haven't written the script yet, but I have this whole story and this whole world and all of these things, and here's all these details, and it's like, great, gotta write that script. Like, I know that you're sitting there. I was brought on one time to be like a consultant on like a webcomic thing. Which is a weird thing to do, but it paid, and that's what we do in this industry. And it was just like so much of just Bibling and more, and I was like, you have enough. Like, let's get to telling a story. But they just wanted more and more things figured out and more lore built up for the world. And it's like, you can really fall in the pitfall of doing that. Especially because, like, odds are you're doing this for like a one shot or a mini series if you're trying to get in the current landscape. And you're not gonna get to where.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the big differences between like a comic and a novel. Like, in a novel, you have the page space, you have the world, word count to explore those worlds, but so much of the time that would be spent doing that in a novel is not time that translates to a comic. So
Yeah.
when you're doing world building, and I think we've touched on this in previous creator corners, but just to kind of like put a nice pin
Yeah. And not everybody's seen
in
all
the
of them, you
exactly
know.
exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the kind of comic specific or comic shortcuts that you can use for to get world building out in a quick way or in an efficient way rather?
Thing is artists. Like that's the
Yeah.
most it's the visual part of the world. But like it sounds stupid and simple, but it's so true. And a lot of times when you're working with a really great artist, they'll be asking you about the world, and you'll be telling them things about the world, and they'll know how to build
Mm-hmm.
things
Or they'll be
into
coming
like the
up with things
background
about
things.
the world.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like honestly, go and look at Butch Mappa's thread on Kardak the Mystic on I think it's on Blue Sky or maybe it's on X. It's on one of those. And the amount he talks about like the way he built out the world in like the backgrounds of a lot of the art is fantastic. He has a very long thread on it. It's great. And it'll give you a good idea of like what an artist can do with that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. But yeah, just by putting in like stuff in your description stuff and talking to the artist and being like, okay, this world is, it's apocalyptic or whatever. Like it needs that. Like on a book that I'm pitching around right now, a big thing is there is graffiti in this city that has a lot of world building to it.
Yeah.
Which is, a thing when you're just like, okay, it's a dystopian future book. So one of the ways, especially if you don't want your character to be cognizant of the dystopia,
Mm-hmm.
element, which is a thing going on here, is like how do I inform the reader without informing the character? And it's like
Right.
background stuff like graffiti and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of ways that you can visually world build. That's I think shortcut one, and then literally the exact. I don't think you can get more opposite is as we always talk about the kind of the shortcut through comics is captions. Like
Yep.
it's just it's there. It's like okay, you can tell them things in captions. Like that is the number one thing. I mean, we actually in a book that we're doing together, we did I think one of the big world building shortcuts, which is like character boxes.
Yeah.
That just like you
Mm-hmm.
see a character for the first time. Here's who they are. Here's what they were there in Janitor Hero when I did Janitor Hero as well, and they had even more stuff where they had like power levels and powers, like full world building right up
They
there.
do
It's
it
like
in
we're not going to show
Petrolhead
you.
in the
Here are the powers.
in the races when they had like the stat blocks for the Petrolhead racers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
fun and
yeah, yeah.
good.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think that comics
This one's a
are
great example of world building too. By the
oh
way,
yeah,
read
yeah,
Petrolhead
yeah.
issue 1. Great fucking
Gorgeous world
lesson
building.
on world building.
Yeah. Um oh no, I derailed myself with that. Yeah,
No.
Petrolhead is so good. We're talking about world building.
Yeah.
We're talking about shortcuts in world building. Yeah, I think comics
Shortcuts,
specifically
Katie.
are
Tell us the
uh
shortcuts.
I think comics specifically are one of the most forgiving mediums where like if I were to turn on a movie and it would have on-screen text because movies will sometimes do that, and it's like
Yeah.
7:40 a.m. San Francisco, the year
Yeah.
2125, and then it's like 17 years after the end of the world. It's like okay, that's a little much. But if I saw that in a comic book, I'd be like that's efficient. That's efficient delivery. Like being
I am
able.
going to throw out Star Wars opening scroll.
That's so
Very
fair.
iconic and
That's so
accepted.
fair.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
we know, I'm not a big Star Wars person. But that's also like I feel an extreme example. Like the opening scroll is iconic because it's wild. Like it's taking from a
Well, nobody
tradition.
else has really tried to do that,
Well, because I think it took from a tradition of like classic film, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's like a
and
classical thing.
that
Yeah.
stopped being widely used for a reason. Because most
Oh,
people,
I don't know. The amount that the people, the movie will pull from other shit, and I'm shocked that that's not become a thing that like things have tried to do. I think Blade Runner, they didn't do a scroll, but I think Blade Runner has a decent amount of text at the beginning to give you the world building, if I'm not mistaken. I believe
yeah, I think you.
the OG Blade Runner.
What I think is I have seen Blade Runner. I
Good,
really
very
love
good film.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. It was the first Philip K. Dick book that I read. My sister gave it to me, and I remember when I got to the end, and it was like, holy shit, the animal is fake. I went and I just sat in my sister's room, and she just looked at me. She's like, "What do you fucking want?" And I'm like, and just held the book. It was like, my world has been shattered. Like 12 years old. But in any case, um, yeah, in comics you can get away with like that kind of opening thing of like now New York City, 17 years after the apocalypse, and
Yeah.
it's really a digestible part of the medium,
Yeah.
because you expect kind of shortcuts like that, and I think that that's a lot more elegant than something like opening on two characters saying like, "Man, I can't believe it's been 17 years since the end of the world." I don't know why I'm picturing them
How
mopping a
fast those
floor,
years go.
right? Uh,
You see?
Yeah, and whereas I think that's something that you can get away with more in something like film or a novel, obviously not with that exact dialogue. Uh, Comics don't have room for that. Like we don't have room to set the scene. You're in the scene. Um, so yeah, I think that that's a really quick and efficient way as a writer to get your world across. But just to indulge ourselves, creating new worlds
Indulge
is so
yourselves.
fun.
Yeah.
It's such a hoot and a howl. I'm kind of skipping over the like world building within the real world because that's less fun to talk about. Do you have any quick thoughts on
So,
world building
yeah,
within the real
it's
world?
it's mostly research.
Yeah,
You gotta live with if you're a writer, research is part of the job. I think that's something that to accept, especially when things are set in the real world. It's why I so enjoy sci-fi. I think I've weirdly fallen into being a
yeah,
sci-fi writer in a lot of ways. Because I very much would rather create a planet and create like my own sci-fi rules than sit down and go, okay, you know, what was Egypt like in, ancient times, and what does
hmm
that look like? But I think it starts with research, and then, you got to build up enough legitimacy. And then there's, a thing that I think some people are unable to do, which is you have to be willing to relax on certain bits of
yeah,
the historical. You want the enough historical to kind of build it into history, but then you have to relax on like every single detail being exactly how history was because it's still a
right,
story. And kind of from there, and obviously real world doesn't have to be in the past, so it could be,
hmm
in the present. But it's the same thing there, where like a lot of people will just write like where they are, where they live, because that makes life easier. But like you can also look into like, okay, what are things like on the West Coast? What's, LA like? And then, it's kind of the same thing where it's like break certain things. It's like, do we really need, like, it might be fun to have them sitting in LA traffic for a little bit, but do we really need them to be like unable to get anywhere in an efficient time manner because that's how LA is? Like, probably not. So like just know where to relax and when to like
hmm
follow the real world stuff. And then like you got the I think the annoying thing for me as somebody who is bad at lifing is you just got to know how basic things work. Like
yeah,
sometimes that can be a struggle where you're like, oh, my character's doing this thing that I've never done before and I don't really know how this works. Or it's like, I don't know, there's certain dumb things like that where it's just like, oh
hmm
man, like how do I like maybe it's like changing a car tire or something. It's like, how does changing a tire work? And it's like now I gotta watch a tutorial on how to change a tire. And I have done
and
stuff like that for a
hey,
comic book where it's
that's
like
good because
basic
you should
how
know
to
how to change a
videos.
tire.
Yeah.
It's good. Learn life skills through doing your nerdy ass writing,
Yeah.
because your characters aren't always going to be nerds. Um,
Yeah.
no, that hits a lot of the big things on the real world. I think that an important thing with writing within the real world and putting kind of your own world into that, like making your world in kind of facsimile of the real world, is how I think of it. So this is not, our universe's Chicago. This is my universe's Chicago. So if I need to break rules, those rules never even existed, because this is, yeah,
But real world book where a guy carries an RPG everywhere and nobody like questions it
yeah,
because like I wanted them all to carry weapons around and I was like I'm not gonna bother with how the fuck this is possible in the real world because it just isn't. Like no, they couldn't go everywhere
exactly.
with weapons strapped to them, but like it's
Yeah, and I
important for
think
the
that
book. So
the best way to think about it is this is not the real world. This is my facsimile of the real world. So you're not constantly trying to figure out ways to get around the rules of the real world. You start with a fake world and just kind of take the pieces of the real world that you want and build it
it's a
onto
great way to
there.
look at it.
Yeah.
That's a really great way
Um,
to look at it. I love that.
but the really fun part is when you're making brand new worlds. We love making new worlds in this house, whether that is something that, again, kind of is a bit of a facsimile of the real world. Like if you're like, ah, yes, this is a city on a planet that's not quite our own, but it's got cars and skyscrapers. Or you're doing something completely wild where you're like, okay, yes, we are in a different world, and there are orcs and dragons, and I don't know, people live in straw
Dwarves.
houses, dwarves in the sky.
I'm
Where
gonna use Sky
on
Dwarfs for something now. It's
God,
happening.
I feel like I don't want to burst your bubble, and this shouldn't burst your bubble. We keep saying sky dwarves, and I swear there's something that has iconic sky dwarves in it, and I can't remember, and I'm
Skylanders doesn't
losing
have
it.
dwarves, right? That's
What
not a thing. I
doesn't?
don't think so. Skylanders. I don't think there's a dwarf in
Oh, I don't
Skylanders.
think so.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually probably Skylanders has literally everything. I've never
That's true.
touched this stuff, but again, at that sweet sweet
Oh,
used
I did.
bookstore,
Yeah,
um,
Skylanders was fun.
I
Good
believe
time.
it. I think it was a
Bring it
little
back.
after my time, and I wasn't really a Spyro kid. I'm more emotionally attached to Crash Bandicoot.
That's fair. It was just
Um,
really it was a good time. It's a great vibe. I
I
love the
believe it.
idea of toys come to life. It's good. It's a good vibe.
It's a
I
good
do it with
vibe.
comics. Doesn't really make
Yeah,
any sense, but I want
yeah,
that.
that's fine. But when we're talking about building a whole new world, we touched
Whole
a
new
little
world.
bit on where
A
to start
whole
when doing
new
any world
world.
building. Boy, oh boy, if you're doing a completely original setting, you've got a lot to bite off.
It's fun times
When
though.
hmm,
It's fun times though.
it's fun times though. It's
Crack
such
in.
good fun times. When you are building out a brand new world, where do you start? And in general, what is your strategy with world building? Like this is a little bit echoey of the previous
Yeah,
question, but we're talking
no,
specifically
no.
when you're making a brand new world.
Yeah. This is this. I mean, still got to start with the story and the concept.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I think it's very difficult to sit down and be like, I just want to create a world for a book, and it's like that's a tough ask. But
Hmm.
it's like
I
a lot of
disagree,
times
but
it's like
that's
okay,
fine.
what's okay, like what's the like what's the story? It's like okay, I think it'd be fun to do I'm just gonna go back to something that I had mentioned in an earlier thing, like to do space court. I like the idea of intergalactic, like trials, and that's like where my concept is. And it's like okay, what does the world have to be like for there to be intergalactic trials? Well, logically, if there's intergalactic trials, it means that there should be some sort of like system where a bunch of different planets all are connected and their
Yeah,
legal systems are even connected. So maybe there's like a coalition of planets or some sort of like
yeah.
connectivity. The United Planets of America. We're going to set this in the far future. Now it's the United Planets of America instead of the United States of
And it's
America.
still
And
America.
yeah, everything's America. America, fuck yeah. We're gonna
America.
call it Space America. Fuck yeah, that's the book's name. And now, and then we dropped the trial and we moved the concept to something else, and it started there, but now we're in Space America. Fuck yeah. And but yeah, I think it's important to start with the story or the concept or whatever. Start because if you're sitting down to write a comic, unless you've been commissioned to do something, and then usually you'll have something from the person asking for something to use, which might be like a target demographic, or it might be just like whatever it is that's given, maybe a character given you, whatever it is.
Hmm.
You'll probably be given something if you're being commissioned. It's very rarely that you are commissioned and given a complete blank slate, and it's like just do something. So start from whatever got you to sit down to write your new thing. Is it like, okay, I had this idea? Is it okay, I had this thing? Is it I just want to get some writing done, so maybe I'll scroll back through old ideas that I had? Or is it okay, somebody came to me with we want something for children that involves space pirates.
Hmm.
So I'm going to start there. So start with whatever you have and then start to logically build out the pieces from. It's the same thing of separation, where it's like start with where you are and then one degree of separation, and then just kind of build
Yeah,
out.
love that. And when you're looking at a like whole cloth new world, how are you balancing originality with kind of established tropes with pulling from reality?
I think if I fully believe this, or if I do fully, I think I fully believe this, but I might still break it sometimes because I'm, how I am. I think you get in a lot of trouble when you're trying to be original. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
It
Like when you're
does. It
actively thinking about
does.
like this needs to be different, this needs to be original, it can't be like I think you start moving away from things that are very common for a reason, which is
Yes.
because like they work. This is how stories work. This is
Like,
how
oh, we
worlds
like
work.
having aliens that have faces that can emote.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's like, oh, I decided that all of our aliens are gonna, be just weird, visually recognizable. They're not all gonna have eyes or anything. Like, they're not all gonna speak. Some are gonna just like censor through things. And it's like, oh, this doesn't make for good storytelling. Or it's like they're all gonna actually speak different languages, and I'm gonna have somebody there translating everything. It's like that doesn't make for a good reading
Yeah.
experience when everything's there, twice so that people can translate things. But yeah, I think so. I think you can get in a lot of trouble trying to be original. I think where that differs is when you are like intentionally like sidestepping something in a way where the reader's
Hmm.
going to know you are. Like, it's like, okay, how do I twist this thing, or how do I, play on a trope? Like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm gonna, set up for the trope and then sidestep it. It's like Absolute Superman, where they set up for Clark to be sent off on his
Yeah.
own, and then they intentionally sidestepped it and went, no, we're all going on the ship off the planet. And it's like, that's a nice way, because like it's a very intentional sidestepping. But other than
Yeah.
that, I wouldn't try to be original. I would sit down and go, what is best for my story? What does the world need to be for my story? What is going to be the most entertaining? What's going to work the best? And then like you have to be careful that you're not sitting here being like, oh, wait a minute, I just made Star Trek again.
Oh no,
Oops.
I'm writing fan fiction.
Yeah, and then like, okay, then you've gone too far. But yeah, I think trying to be original can
Hmm.
certainly get you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good and weird to say, I guess, but kind of underrated piece of advice. Where it's like, yeah,
Right.
and chances are, if you're writing a sci-fi book, it's because you like sci-fi, and you shouldn't deny yourself a little gray alien, a little green man, or a gray alien just because they're not original. You like sci-fi because a, you like a little green man. You like a Martian. So let yourself have a Martian. God damn it.
Agree. Full agree. But let's swing back here, because you have not
Oh,
yet told us where you start when you're building out a whole new fresh world. And you said to me that you don't think it's weird to sit down with absolutely nothing to build out your world. So I want to hear how you sit down to build out your whole new world. Where do you start?
so I don't think I think that it's quite easy to start with a world and then find a place for a character and a story to work within it. I mean, obviously there's going to be like kind of seeds of storytelling in that. If it's like, oh, here is my because I'm turning into more of a sci-fi lady, but I generally think of myself as more of a fantasy person. But if I'm sitting here like, ah, yes, here is my kingdom, and there's evil magic everywhere, and that's fun. And I'm like, I don't know what my plot is. I know that I have these like corrupted lands. How thrilling! Ooh, and there's probably an unseated king because the lands are corrupted. And I'm like, oh, here are all of these little bits and pieces coming together. So I think that a starting with the world and not the story works really well to a point where it's like, okay, this is really good for building atmosphere and helping me inform the kind of story that I want to tell, which helps me create a character who fits that story. But it can only go so far before you can get away with not having your character anymore. Like chances are that's going to end up being a character who's quite connected to whatever world you've created, because it goes in kind of in almost opposite direction where it's
Yeah,
like, okay, I have all of these world building parts and now I need to find a way for all of them to be 1 degree of separation away from my main character.
yeah, yeah.
um
But I mean, like, here's what I want to say about that. First, importantly, because I think importantly, you didn't really sit down without a story, like to some extent. But like, you don't need a character to have something before you sat down. Like, you sat down with, I want a corrupt kingdom, and like that's enough of a concept, I think, to sit down and start doing something. And while I might not wait as long to get to like, oh, what's the story of that and what's the character of that, I think it's important to note that that's not just sitting down and be like, I'm gonna create a thing, you know.
I think it is the next step when you've said I'm going to create a thing. Like, what is the thing? A fantasy kingdom. And what's happening in this kingdom? Evil magic. And I wouldn't say that's a plot, because like
It's a concept, but yeah, it's
whether
something.
that becomes
Yeah,
like, oh, this is a
I guess my
hero.
my question is, so in your, are you sitting down with nothing and then going to kingdom, or are you thinking of kingdom and then sitting down to write something?
I have found myself staring at the page before and being like, what the fuck am I gonna write? And then I just start going.
That's fair. I very, very rarely do that. I usually need so, and if I am doing that, I'm just gonna scroll through old ideas. I'm very rarely gonna stare and be like, I need comic idea.
I'm
Doesn't work
I'm
for me.
terrible at
My
going through
comic
my old
ideas
ideas.
happen when I'm like walking or like walking my dog. Usually, I realize that it maybe sounded weird that I just said walking my dog, or
I
like
like that
taking
you've
a
made it
shower
weird to go
wildly.
for a walk. Like, just go for
I
a
feel
walk,
like you
man.
usually then like go for a jog. Like, do people just walk? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like walking is like a middle-aged woman thing. You know,
Well,
the
hello. I'm
middle-aged ladies of the
27. Do I
town walk
count?
around. Not quite yet. Not quite.
Because my favorite thing to do is amble about with a pal. Like, if me and a girlie are just going on a walk and just gossiping, oh my god, the
Maybe it's
best.
just she's getting there a little early. You know, she's just gotten there
Exactly.
a little
Look,
early.
I aspire to be a middle-aged woman.
It's good to have goals.
And see,
It's
I
fair. It's just
think
I
this
usually
is
wouldn't just stare at the screen and like be like, bring the new idea because it doesn't work for me. But if it does work for you, then
I
that's
think
great.
it kind of has to work for me because I'm semi rigorously scheduled. I sign myself up for a lot of commitments. So it's like, oh, I have a free hour. We're gonna sit down and write. It's like, what are we writing?
Okay. I just always have something to write. Like I have way more back catalog of ideas than I have
That's
actively
so fair,
developed
but I feel like
ideas.
my problem is
So
that I will stare at my back catalog and be like, none of you are good enough. Time to
mhm.
start from square one.
I always have something that I want to work on, and then like I'll come up with ideas, and I'll come up with ideas much faster than I need ideas. So it's
Mm-hmm.
always the
Oh yeah, that's
it
totally the
replenishes
vibe, but
itself
is it an
more than
idea that
anything.
I want to work on right now?
That's fair. That's fair. It's all in your. If you've learned anything from these creative corners, I hope that it's all your own process. And it's
Oh yeah.
whatever works for you. So you can take as much as you want from what we say, or nothing at all. The only problem I'll say is if you think your process is so perfect that nothing anybody says could ever help you or aid you, and then you probably are just unwilling to actually grow or accomplish anything as a writer. But else, it is fine if you sit here and you hear what we say and you go, nope, I like the way that I do that better than the way that you do that, and that might work for you.
Yeah.
But then maybe you'll hear Jim Zub or Robert Kirkman or Scott Snyder tell you the way they do something, and you'll go, oh, that's better than the way that I do something, and you'll learn like that. So this is becoming
Yeah.
very just cookie cutter, but
Yeah, but that's
that's my
fine.
thought.
I think that's a good moment as any to end the creator corner. Jay, would you like to tell our dear listeners what we have going on in next week's episode?
Yeah, next week's episode is going to involve 5 polls, which is I think less than we've had in less than this week's probably.
Less than this week, but
Yeah, Minor Arcana number 5. The Moon is following us number 5, doubling up on number 5s there. Nightwing 122.
that's the only
Titans
122 we have this week.
Very importantly, Titans 19. I find it very interesting that those are on the same week every month, by the way. It's an interesting little thing.
I dig it.
And then Laura Kinney, Wolverine number 2. But Katie, do you want to tell the peoples what has already come out that they need to check out?
Yes, I was trying to make Laura Kinney claws. It looked bad and dumb. But yeah, we doubled up on our bonus episode content last weekend. Fine folks.
Yes, we did.
On last Friday, we posted the 3rd installment of Absolute Universe Fantasy Football, where it is Team Wonder Woman versus Team Batman versus Team Bot Running Superman. Things are getting real tight, as in I am one ahead of Jay and one behind the bot. So we are all super tight together.
Wildly, the bot is winning despite, I think, winning 0 out of the 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's very rude.
Yeah.
But we also, on this past Monday, posted our best of the year with all of our favorite series for the year. I shouldn't say all of. It was just our top 10. It's a very curated list.
Yes. Tell them one of your honorable mentions right now to give them a tease. Tell them one of your honorable mentions right now.
One of my honorable mentions was The Hunger in the Dusk. What was one of your honorable mentions?
Some Will about The Displaced was one of my honorable mentions. A very good series.
And as a little sneak peek for you, we had, I believe, 3 series in common, or just 2?
Depends how you look at it. But yes, 3.
That's fair. Yeah, something like that. So yeah,
Depends if you
good
consider
stuff.
one the same, because it's kind of the same. There's one that's kind of the same, and Katie's gonna be confused for the rest of this video, which is gonna be very funny.
Accurate. But what else? What else is in the pipeline for the script heroes, Jaybird?
Well, every single Saturday, including this past Saturday and this coming Saturday, we now stream on Twitch and our YouTube gaming channel, both linked in the description. We stream Marvel Rivals as we grind up the ranked.
We're currently in bronze.
Yeah, we hit silver last season, and then we got reset this season. So our goal this season is to get to gold to improve on last season. Every season we're going to try to improve by at least one rank, hopefully. This season it is the grind to gold. That's so definitely join us for that. But as we've done 2 out of our 4 best of the year videos, we have our 3rd one coming up this Saturday. It's going to be our best writers.
Oh, it's going to be so hard.
It's going to be very difficult and very, very fun. I'm very excited for it. But yeah, I think that's everything we have going on. So
I think so. Thank you for sticking around for what I believe is going to be a bit of a behemoth of an episode.
Yeah, we went. Yeah, this is going to be a crazy long episode, actually.
Yeah,
so sorry.
Yeah.
But we hope to see you next week. Comic Geeks.